Hey, weirdos, I'm Ash.
And I'm Elena.
And I'm Jordan.
And this is Morbid. Special episode with Jordan of the Nighttime Podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
But we just wanted to let you know that the content that we are going to be sharing today is a bit explicit.
E for explicit.
E for explicit. You don't want those kiddos in the car for this one.
Not this one. So Jordan, you have quite a tale to tell us today.
I dare say the craziest story that's ever been told on Morbid. And that's set, like, there's high expectations coming into this podcast, but I think I got one for you.
I think you do.
we both agree in unison.
We do, as always.
But before we get into the glove guy, though, I'm always curious in this sort of thing. Is it seems like every town in the world has their own little like urban legend story that's maybe true, maybe isn't. Maybe it's a weirdo. Maybe it's some odd thing that happened. Is there any in your town? Either of you?
We did have one.
We do, but we can't tell
I
it
won't
because
say
we'll
who
out
it
ourselves.
is. Obviously, I won't say. But it was like a guy that everybody had all kinds of crazy stories about. When in reality, I'm pretty sure it was like just an old guy who had been through it.
Yeah.
And was probably, dealing with like mental illness of some kind.
Okay.
But of course, kids are kids. But people used to ring his doorbell and like beep when they went by his house and all that. And it's actually kind of sad now that I think about it.
Well, that took a dark turn. And I think if it was 300 years ago, they would be labeled like, like a witch or some crazy thing like that.
Oh, yeah.
But now it's a whole different vibe. And that's kind of the way I see the story of the glove guy. So I live in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is a city on the east coast of Canada. I kind of describe it as like, I don't know, like Boston's like younger, tamer, smaller brother who grew up with like, spoiled.
Love
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a university city. It's a great place to be. But since I've been here, I moved here in 2001, and I remember one of the first stories I heard, and I should contextualize it by saying when I moved to Halifax, that was kind of like me coming to the big city. So I expected, crime and danger. One of the first stories that I heard that kind of made me feel weird is people saying, like, if you go downtown at night, you got to watch out for the glove guy. And I thought, the glove guy, like, what is that?
That sounds ominous as hell.
It does sound ominous as hell. And the story that I was told was simply, it was this man who drove around downtown late at night looking to pick up men as a way to like engage in some kind of like leather glove fetish this guy had.
Okay.
And I thought, this sounds weird. It's probably not true. It's probably some kind of like old wives' tale to scare people out of hitchhiking or something like that.
Yep.
So that's kind of like the background of how this whole thing starts. But it was very like common knowledge. Like people talked about this guy all the time. I would hear it and thought, there's no way that's true. Someone would have arrested him. So I don't know if you use Reddit, but in Halifax, there's like a group on Reddit that is all about like Halifax news and Halifax lifestyle. And a post was made to the Halifax Reddit that it was the headline or the title of the post was something like "Warning to Men of Halifax, late night glove salesman." And this post immediately blew up. And I think to this day, it is like the most commented on and upvoted post in the history of the Halifax based
wow.
Reddit.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. And it's a man explaining his encounter with the glove guy. And I read it and I thought like, wow, like this guy sounds really believable, but it wasn't this poster that convinced me the whole story was true. It was the comments underneath. It was one person after another recounting like the exact same story with all of the same elements in it, to the point that it almost seems like it was just the same guy telling the story, 40 different ways using slight changes. In fact, one of the people underneath it, one of the comments that stood out to me said, they're addressing the person who made the post. They said, "I didn't believe you until I read the 14th identical comment here." So,
there's no way that this is just people making this up.
Yeah. So now's our chance to get initiated into him. So rather than read you this post, I did a series of episodes about the glove guy. And one of the first people I reached out to was the guy who made this post. And he told me the story in a little more detail than what he posted on Reddit. So I have a couple stories I'll share as we go, and they're going to kind of ramp up in intensity. So let's start light with the story that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh shit, this is real.
Oh shit, this is actually happening.
We're all adults here. Do we have any rules about bad language?
No. Never.
Sexuality?
Never.
No.
Okay,
Never.
good. Well, buckle up. So here comes this guy. We'll call this guy the Reddit guy.
Okay, so my experience with the glove guy, it was probably 2 a.m, end of the night out. I was walking home on my own, and I was actually walking down towards where the taxis kind of pull up, and this other guy pulls up kind of right next to me. Nice kind of looking car, black SUV, well-dressed guy, and he said, "Hey man, are you going somewhere? Do you need a lift?" My first thought, I wasn't even. I didn't feel alarmed at all. I was like, oh, sweet, this guy's just, like, running his own Uber service. Like, I'm into that. So I was like, yeah, man, like, I'm heading this way. I'm just going out of town, and kind of said where I was going. And he said, yeah, hop in. I'm going that way. So I was like, okay, cool. So I got in the car, and I actually gave him $10. I was like, so you just kind of Uber around town on your own, do you? And he was like, yeah, man, I just, like, drive around picking people up and, like, give people rides at night. And I was like, okay, cool. So, yeah, anyway, quite quickly as he was driving, he kind of said, so this is my deal. Like, I give people rides, and I also sell gloves. And, like, this is my thing, selling gloves. And I've got these great leather gloves. Like, do you drive? Do you need driving gloves? Like, all about the driving gloves. And he had, like, these gloves on himself. And I was kind of like, okay, this guy's kind of quirky, but whatever, seems like a friendly guy. So as he was driving me, he was like, yeah, just like try on my gloves here. And he reaches over into the back seat and he brings out this like briefcase almost of gloves, different sizes, different styles, leather gloves. And he said, yeah, this is my business. They're all handmade. Like they're high quality driving gloves. Like, why don't you try some on? And I was like, okay, well, this guy's giving me a ride home. So I'll humor him and, just check out his glove business. And I'm not going to buy any gloves, but, he was like, yeah, this is my biggest size. Like, you try these ones on. And I tried them on, and it was like the tightest thing I've ever had on, tight leather glove on my hand. And he just said, yeah, just like work it in and stretch it out, and you'll kind of, you'll get a feel for it. And I'm most of the way home by this point. I'm trying to like fit this glove on my hand, and he just says, yeah, just like pull down on the palm side of your hand and kind of stretch it out like this and kind of work your fingers. And so I start doing this, like trying to fit this glove on. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? Like, this glove is never going to fit me. And we're kind of pulling onto my road, and he's breathing like really heavily as I'm like trying to work this glove onto my hand. And quite quickly it just became apparent to me it was like getting something out of it, sexual. Like, he was really into me like putting this leather glove on. And at that point I was just like, okay, this is just weird as hell. Like, anyway, so I said, yeah, this is good, man. Like, thanks for the ride. I'm just gonna get out here. And I actually got out the car and like walked around the corner, like away from my house, and hid in like my neighbor's backyard until I saw him drive off. And he sat there for like a good 5 minutes before he drove off. But yeah, it was very like, it went from being this kind of a little bit weird, this guy's kind of quirky, he's selling me his gloves, whatever, to all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, he's like, I'm being victimized in a way. Like, he's getting something out of me trying this glove on. Like, he doesn't want me to buy this glove at all. He wants me to spank him with it or something, Anyway, I got out and I went home and I messaged my roommate. I was like, I think this guy kind of like took advantage of me last night almost, with these leather gloves. And she said, oh yeah, that's the glove guy. And I was just like, oh, so you know about this guy? Like, he's infamous kind of thing. And yeah, it turned out like she told me her friend had an interaction with him, and I looked it up online, and there was a few other Reddit posts about him, and I was just like, oh, this guy's does this every night to random young men in Halifax and has been doing it for years. And there's just so many stories about this guy and all of the other weird stuff that he's done with people.
So how are you both feeling?
I also feel victimized. I have
so many. First of all, that guy has a great voice.
He does.
First, let's get that out of the way right away.
I love that.
And two, like, I feel so bad that he's like, oh shit. Like, I was just victimized by someone. Like, that's got to be such, like, a weird feeling that you're like, I didn't even realize it.
Like, looking back on it.
And that's kind of a theme that comes up throughout it. It's everybody, I think, since it's so weird and bizarre, and since it's targeting men, I think people are quick to like laugh it off and be like, oh, like the glove guy's crazy. I can't believe you saw him. But if
that's
this was
scary.
If this was the other way around, I think if it was a woman in the car, it would be on the news, the next day.
100%. 100%.
And it should be treated the same. Like, it's still, because the thing is, it's like, dude, if you like watching guys put on leather gloves, like, just find consensual people who will be like, sure, I'll put on leather gloves for you.
Like
I'm sure someone will do that for you. Like, don't victimize people to get it done.
Yeah.
Right.
No kink shaming at all. But
exactly.
Consent is
Kink
so
shaming,
important.
no. But like, get a consensual person.
That's the thing. You're bound to find someone somewhere.
Yeah. And now in this story that I just shared, we've only dipped our feet into how crazy this is going to get. This is easily the most innocuous of the stories that we'll share.
Which is
what
wild.
happened when I read this guy's story, I'm like, I'm going to do a podcast episode about it. Like, this is, too much. And I thought, I'm not going to like try to figure out who the glove guy is and dox this guy. I wanted to stick with kind of like the legend of the glove guy and hear what, the different experiences people had with him. So the way I did that was I put a post up on my Facebook page with a picture of his business card, because he actually gives people a business card that has like a phone number and a picture of gloves, I think. And I said, put a picture of that up and I said, like, have you had an experience with the glove man? If so, email me. And I put that up, say like 7:00 at night. I woke up the next morning, I look at my phone and it was like, I'm not even exaggerating. It was like 60 emails from people all telling the exact same story. Like, here's what happened to me.
Oh my God.
And that's when I realized, like, oh man, like I stepped in it. I got a story on my hands. So what I did was I just arranged interviews with as many people as were willing to talk to me. And just like we're doing it now, they were all Zoom interviews. So I'd like, I could see their faces. And I just have to mention that because the guys that came on the show and told me their story about their encounters with the glove guy, every one of them were like big, tall, dark hair, handsome. It looked like I was interviewing like one after another, like a professional hockey team or something.
Wow. So the glove guy has a type, is what you're saying.
So clearly. Yeah, it was like, I wish I could share the photos because as you look at the guys, you're like, oh my God, that's like, a bunch of like kind of male models or something.
Yeah, like clearly picking a certain kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Are you brave enough
and the
to
fact that he had
start getting into it?
Yes, because I'm thinking like if that's tame, the fact that he had to like hide in somebody's yard to like, because he was so scared by it and like freaked out by it, that's so sad.
And that's a tame experience?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure you both have had weird drives home from an odd cab or something. Have you ever had anything where you're like, don't drop me off at my house, like a couple doors down and I'm going to act like this is my house?
I don't think I've ever had that, but I'm also a crazy person and I just like won't use Uber by myself.
I don't know that I've ever, I've never Ubered by myself.
I won't do it by myself.
That was like the one thing that me and my friends were pretty smart about.
Yeah.
And I never Ubered back to my own house. I Ubered to other people's houses.
Yeah, so there's that.
Yeah, but I think women have that ingrained in them. Don't go home alone. Don't get in a cab alone. We're guys, that's not as much the thing. And and I don't know if you can tell from that message, or I don't think he said it specifically. At the time that all these stories were set, we didn't have Uber in Halifax. It was like outlawed or whatever. So we had actual cabs. And we didn't have Uber, but a lot of people in Halifax, since it's a university city and there's a lot of tourists coming, they don't know that. So a lot of people that we'll hear from in this episode are people who believed he was maybe an Uber or some Uber-like service. But
that makes
sense.
sense.
Feel like you can trust it, and especially as like a big male.
Right.
You're like, yeah, I'll get into this Uber.
And he said, too, it was like a nice car, a nicely dressed man. You don't expect it to get that weird.
Yeah.
And that's another side of this. The stories we're going to hear, it's always a nice car, but it's a different car. And I don't know for sure, but I believe they're all rentals, is my understanding.
Interesting.
Oh, that's interesting.
An odd way to spend every weekend, but
yes.
Here we go. So we heard from the Reddit guy, which was the first guy that kind of the whistleblower from my point of view. But let's move on to hear from. He is someone, he was visiting Halifax from a neighboring city. And again, we have a busy nightlife here. So we have a lot of people coming to Halifax from out of province. I think he was coming from New Brunswick, which is like the next door neighbor province. Here's what happened.
So I was downtown with some of my buddies. They're down studying at Dal and SMU. So we were out at a bar and having a couple of drinks. I wasn't really feeling it, so I thought I'd take off and go get a Willie's Poutine. I got my Willie's Poutine, and I was on my way back to my buddy's place. It's about a 20-minute walk, so I was on my way, and all of a sudden this black Jeep pulls up beside me, and buddy puts down the window and yells out, "You need to drive." So I kind of looked at it for a second. I was like, "Are you a cab?" And he's like, yeah. So I was like, "Oh, perfect. Yeah, sure. I'd love a drive." And wasn't my smartest decision, but I drunkenly believed him. So I hopped in, and I told him that I only had like $10 on me. He's like, "Yeah, no, that's fine. Don't worry about it." I was like, "Okay." So I threw in the GPS, and I was just directing them. And the drive to my buddy's place was fine. It was whenever we got there that it got weird. He's like, before you leave, you got to try on my gloves." And he was like falling over his words. He was very like intense. And he's like, "You got to try on my gloves." And I was like, "Gloves?" He's like, yeah, no, I make gloves. You got to try them on. I was like, "Okay, all right, man, I'll try on your gloves." So he digs in the back seat. It's this big box full of gloves, and he gives me this real small pair. And I got holes in the knuckles, these leather pair of gloves. And I was like, "I don't know if this is gonna fit me, man." He's like, "No, just pull them on. Like they'll fit." I was like, "Okay." So I tried putting these gloves on, and of course they didn't fit. I was like, "All right, man. Like I can't put these on. They're not gonna fit me." And he's like, "All right, I got another pair. Just wait 1 second. Just wait 1 second." He's getting more and more kind of intense. And he reaches in the back and he gets another pair of gloves. And before he hands them to me, he sniffs them, and he's like, "Oh, it's good leather. I make these gloves. They're really, really good quality gloves. Like I make them. They're really good leather." I was like, "All right, man." Like I was at this point, I was getting pretty sketched out. I was drunk, and it really sobered me up at this point. This weird interaction with him. So I was like, "I'll try on these gloves, but then I'm taking off, okay?" So I put on one of the gloves, and I was like, "Yeah, man, it's a nice glove. It's definitely good leather, I'm sure." And he's like, "You got to put the other one on." I was like, "No, I got a pretty good feel for it. Like, I think that's good. I got to take off." My buddy's probably wondering where I am. So I took off the glove, made sure that the door was unlocked, and then just took off.
Did he say like, "All right, see you later"? Or was it the kind of thing where you just like walked away as he was continuing to try to get you to put the gloves on?
He really wanted my business afterwards. He's like, "I'll take my card. Like, you can get a hold of me." He gave me his card. He's like, "If you ever want gloves, like, feel free to call or email." He's like, "I got a website. Like, I sell all across, free shipping across the world." And I was just like, this guy's nuts. But
did you get a sense that, like, he was getting something from seeing you struggle to put on the glove or anything? Like, did you feel like?
No, he was getting really excited, and he was having a hard time talking. Like, just me, like, trying to put on the glove. Like, I could just feel him watching me. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, he was staring intensively, watching me try to put these gloves on. I felt pretty dirty and unclean. Like, I actually went inside and washed my hands right after. Like, he made me pretty uncomfortable.
And what then again? Like, you wouldn't have known anything about Glove Guy not being from Halifax. What did you say? But your buddies are here. Like, what did you say to them, and how did they react?
I never heard of him ever before, and I walked into my buddy's place, and I was like, "You'll never believe what just fucking happened." They're like, "Did you get picked up by Glove Guy?" I was like, "Yeah, he picked me up." And then they kind of gave me a recap of who he was and like how he's been around and stuff for a while, and I would have believed them if they told me otherwise.
So basically the exact same story, right?
Yeah. And I love how everyone's just like, "Oh,
that's Glove Guy."
It's like Bigfoot. They're like he's like, "Oh my God, this like hairy guy just high-fived me in the woods." And they're like, "Oh, that's Bigfoot, of course." Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's just like, yeah, it's him.
And the stories as they came through to me, all of them kind of had that same format. Like, I wasn't sure. I was walking alone from downtown. I was drunk. I wasn't sure if he was a cab or not, and he was kind of vague about it. The drive seemed normal. The gloves start. The gloves are too small.
Always.
And then there's usually one little element that mixes it up though. Like in that story with, I think the element that was unique was the smelling of the glove. And I think that is really creepy.
It's heinous.
That adds a little bit
I hate
to
that
it.
so much. It's also like he walks in and says to his buddies like, oh, holy shit, this just happened. They're like, oh, it's Glove Guy.
Yeah.
If someone is visiting you, maybe tell them beforehand about this Glove Guy.
I feel like we probably should have let you know.
Just so you know.
Yeah. And that he said he felt like dirty, like very unclean. I'm like, because so many like women a lot of times like will describe that feeling when like a man usually does something very uncomfortable in your presence and you're like, ew, I felt dirty. And to hear a man say that, like, oh, like I don't know what this feeling is. I feel weird. It's like, there it is.
It's certainly unique. It's not something the average guy would have experienced. I can't think of many times, if any, that I would have had that kind of experience. But for a woman, like being catcalled or whatever, it's like you've all been through it. And I think, again, that's a part of why people resort to, when they've have an experience with Glove Guy, they resort to finding kind of the humor in it. Like the stories we've heard so far, there's a lot of like chuckling and laughing.
Yeah.
But if this was a woman in the car with him and the same thing was reversed, they would not be laughing.
No. But it's the same thing. They're doing the same thing that a lot of women who go through uncomfortable situations do, which is like, you put it on yourself, which is like, I feel dirty. And it's like, well, you didn't do anything. Like, you're like, but you end up feeling like it's somehow like shameful for you.
Yeah.
Somehow.
And the laughing, I think, is just in
uncomfortable,
a way.
like, I don't know what this feeling is.
Like a trauma response. Like, let's make this a little bit of a joke because I don't want to like really go into it.
And it's like the whole, this isn't something usually men talk about or experience. And if they do experience it, they don't talk about it. So it's like, I think they're feeling like, oh, like I don't know how to express this.
Right.
Are you surprised, like, given the two stories we've heard so far, he hasn't got like the shit kicked out of him yet? Because that's kind of where I'm surprised that hasn't happened.
I kind of am, but then you see why, because these people are just so confused. And I think that's part of it for this guy.
Yeah. And so far these men seem like they're just the kind of men that are like kind of people who are like, okay, like, I don't know, like you're a little weird, but I'm just going to leave. Like they don't seem like they seem like they're more just like confused.
They seem like nice guys. Yeah. Who are just like, what the fuck?
But I'm surprised he didn't pick up the wrong person that would
I bet you it's happened.
Turn around.
I haven't heard from that person, but I bet you it's happened.
You have to think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get to the next one. This one is interesting because it's a guy named who's a DJ around Halifax, but he was familiar with the Glove Guy story. So when he got in the car and it started, he knew what was going on. So he got to kind of play with it a little bit.
Ooh. Oh, man.
Well, it was after a drunken night downtown. And anyways, I was, me and my buddies, we all parted ways. So they went back to Dartmouth. And anyways, I was going to wait for a cab. Waiting for a cab. And then this guy pulls up. Just like, waiting for a cab. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I just got off work. I'll drive you. I was also, fairly intoxicated, but the way he said like that, I kind of assumed, oh, this guy is a cab driver, but maybe he took his light off or something. So I get in the cab or the car, and first I think this guy was really cool because he picked me up, and then I was like, I'll even give you some $20 or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's like, all right, cool. And then we get driving, and then he's just like, you like gloves? I was like, what? So then he opens up the glove compartment and pulls out a pair of gloves, and then it's just a light bulb kind of clicks. I'm like, wait a minute. Is this that glove guy, that weirdo that I seen the thing on, right? And I'm starting to think, holy shit, I'm in this guy's cab or his car. Like, I'm actually like in the same car as this guy. Like, this is the guy. So I pull out my phone. And I actually started texting my friend. He looked like he was trying to peer at my phone, like trying to see what I was doing, right? So I kind of tilted it towards me, because then I'm really getting kind of weirded out at this point, right? He's like, "Oh, you're probably trying to Google me, aren't you?" I was like, "No." I'm like, I don't got data, so I couldn't even do that. And it's like, okay, this is weird. This guy is a weirdo. Anyways, so we start driving, and I was going up to, at this point I lived in Clayton Park, so I was going to get him to just take me to the bank up at Clayton Park there by the McDonald's. Anyways, he starts going these weird directions that like almost the complete opposite direction of where I was going. And then he pulls over. I'm like, okay, what is going on? Like, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. Mm-hmm. He's like, don't worry, I'm going to get you home. I'm going to get you home. But first, just try on these gloves. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to go with this guy. I'm just going to fucking do what he says, make him happy. Because I felt like for a minute I was in like Jeffrey Dahmer's car or something, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm putting the gloves on. He's like, yeah, see, just stretch it just like that. Yeah, just pull it back. Yeah, nice like that. Yeah. Yeah, he's sort of like kind of breathing heavy and shit, right? It was really weird. I'm thinking at this point, like, is this guy like getting off to this right now? Because he seems to be enjoying me, watching me put these gloves on. And then I see this paddy wagon drive by. I'm thinking, is this my chance? Do I just get out the car and just run to this cop? Like, I don't know what to do right now. And so he, takes the gloves back, and then we keep going. So then he, starts driving, start going up towards Clayton Park. So I'm like, okay, we're going the right direction. Cool. So I'm just trying to make conversation, just whatever. Then, yeah, he's like, yeah, try on these gloves. I'm like, no, all right, no, try them on. So I put the gloves on. I'm like, okay. Yeah, these feel really nice. Yeah. So I take them off, and he's like, no, keep them on. All right, yeah, no, keep them on. So I just keep them on, and we get to the bank. And then, so I was like, yeah, I'm right back. I'm going to go get your money. He's like, oh, no, keep the gloves on. Keep wearing them. I was like, no, man, I'm going to the bank. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and you want me to wear sketchy leather gloves. I'm like, no. Like, that's sketchy. I was thinking maybe this guy will think that, I'm suggesting that someone might think I'm trying to rob the place or whatever. I don't know, right? Mm-hmm. Just trying to make up any excuse at this point. I don't want to keep your fucking gloves. I don't want to necessarily piss him off and say that. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be nice about the situation. Yeah, so anyways, he's like, okay. So I get out and, I go and grab $20 at the thing. I could have just took off running. But I'm like, no, I told this guy, give him $20, give him his 20, and, he'll leave me alone. When I came back to the car, he's just like, went and unlocked the passenger side door. I was like, no, roll down the window. Like, here you go, man. Here's a 20. Give yourself a good night. He's like, all right, man, you too. So he's like, do you want to ride? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm going to walk from here. So, yeah, I was like, there's no way I'm leading this guy back to my apartment. And walk up the stairs. I'm looking behind me, and the guy's still there. So as soon as I get up the stairs, I just take a left, and just run. I just start running down the street. But yeah, and then I got home and I messaged my buddies. I'm like, you are not going to believe what the f happened to me. And yeah.
It's a shame people who listen to your podcast aren't able to see your faces reacting to this.
I know.
We are recording this. We should post a couple of these.
We definitely should.
Because it's also, he just said like that he was like, you know what, I'm just going to go with this to not piss him off.
The amount of times we have done that.
Thing that like many people can relate to, but especially a lot of women can relate to. Like, I don't want to piss this person off, so I'm just not going to say anything, or I'm just going to go with it.
It's like a survival instinct.
A little bit, or at least avoid kind of ramping it up to that
you don't want to
moment
set it
where
off.
you're like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And when he said, do you like gloves? I was like, I just want somebody to be like, no. I actually hate gloves.
No interest in gloves.
I actually, Like, I have severe trauma from gloves. I don't want to look at them. Like,
now all of those people have severe trauma from gloves.
Like, oh.
After that, I can't even look at leather gloves after this, let alone like the idea of like thin, small ones that you really need to work your hand in. Like, that is disgusting to me.
My God.
No, that's so.
I have such a good pair of nice leather gloves, too, that I was wearing all day yesterday because it's so cold here.
Well, yeah, because they're so fashionable.
Yeah. And they look good. Now I'm going to look at them different.
You are going to look at them different. But they're not tainted, though.
They're not. Not yet.
No, these are different gloves altogether with a lot of different kind of meaning behind the size and fit, it seems.
And that's what I was picturing, driving gloves.
Yeah.
That's what I was picturing before he even said it.
Does he actually have a website that you've stumbled across, or is that just
he
does?
He did. It was a very like rudimentary, basic website with a lot of photos of different pairs of gloves that it seems like he's made them all, which is a very kind of Freddy Krueger kind of thing to do.
Yeah.
A skill. but
and he had a business card that he gave out. There was a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel, I don't believe it's still up, but it is one of the eeriest things. Imagine a still camera. This is from a horror movie. Imagine a still camera on a tripod just pointed at a blank wall. A man with sunglasses on and a leather jacket walks up to the camera and dangles a pair of gloves in front of the camera, pulls them on tight, and then just like fist into palm, pulls them off and puts another pair on, emotionless. And it is some of the creepiest stuff ever.
What the fuck?
Why isn't that a horror movie?
And why like fist to palm? Like why?
I think just to feel the crack of leather.
Yeah, I was going to say it's something about the feeling, definitely, or the sound. Or
I hate it so much.
Okay.
Ooh!
Well, buckle up. We are about to get into, well, maybe not the dark. Well, obviously it's the second darkest, but this story that we're about to share, I'm going to use the name Craig. This guy, I disguised his voice a little bit and give him a fake name. That was a part of the deal. But his experience with the glove guy is completely nuts. And this is where, at the end of this, we're going to have to make a tough decision about the future of Morbid, because there's a short recording of Glove Guy that we can choose to play or not.
Oh my God.
Oh man. It's like a choose your own adventure.
choose your scare. Reader beware.
We'll get into it. First, let's hear Craig's completely unhinged encounter with Glove Guy. You ready?
Yes. No, but yes.
Yes.
So I was just having a regular night downtown with my buddies. Long and short of it is I wind up walking home alone. It's chilly out. I'm only wearing a short sleeve shirt. So I'm trying to flag down any cab that I see. All of them are zooming right past me when all of a sudden the black SUV kind of just pulls up next to me. And I just hear this kind of low, nasally voice just kind of say, yeah, you're looking for a drive? And I look, and it looks like a pretty nice car. It's a well-dressed guy, and I'm trying to kind of calculate what's going on here. He doesn't have the taxi thing on top of his car, but I assumed he was some kind of Uber service, and I think he could see me kind of weighing these options. So eventually he just says, where are you going? And I just tell him I'm going to X place, to which he says, I'm going in that direction anyways. So that's kind of a red flag right there. At the same time, it's cold out. I'm wearing a T-shirt. I'm pretty hammered, so I hit the fuck it button, for better or for worse. And I hop in the car. One of the first things I notice in the car is that he's wearing a pair of leather gloves in June, and he has them on the wheel, and that seemed a little weird to me. The first thing he does when I buckle up my seatbelt is open the glove compartment, at which point, God knows how many pairs of gloves spilled onto my lap. It was like they were packed to the teeth with these leather gloves that all just spilled onto my lap, and he almost frantically starts requesting that I start trying them on, and he's pulling out specific pairs saying, try these on. I'm kind of hesitant at first, like what is going on here? And he reassures me by saying, oh, I'm a glove salesman. Here's my card. I'm a glove salesman. I'm kind of like, okay, I don't give a shit. It's getting me home. Then just take me home. So I try on the first pair, and he starts driving. They're a little too small. He doesn't even seem to give a shit about the road. He just seems very fixated on my opinions of these gloves, and he's very intently watching. We get a little further down, and he offers me a bottle of Coke. It's like this pre-opened bottle, and I'm going to call it like a murky, orangish, beige, brown color. So instead of drinking it, I open it and smell it, and it smells like it's more liquor than alcohol, honestly. So I hand it back to him, and he just kind of I think he said something like, I'm not trying to roofie you, like in his nasally voice, and then he grabs the bottle, and as proof that he wasn't trying to roofie me with one hand on the wheel, he just takes a giant slug of his bottle that he has. At this point, kind of like, oh, shit, like what is going on? This middle-aged man has me in his car, and he's flying down the street, drunk driving, going a little bit over the speed limit. This is the time when I start considering, like, okay, I'm bigger than this guy. Like, I'm not exactly a small dude, and this guy's, I could definitely, I'd feel comfortable in a confrontation against this guy. On the other hand, he's got his hand on the wheel, and he's driving way over the speed limit. God knows what's going to happen if he veers off into something. I'd say to him, like, that was my house, and his response is, do you want some Coke? And I'm like, what? And he opens not the glove compartment, pun intended, the like middle thing in between the seats. He pulls out a very significant amount of cocaine and like asks me if I want some of this. I say pretty much no, because as far as I'm concerned, this dude's trying to knock me out so that he can do some kinky shit with me in a leather dungeon that he has back at his place. So I say no to that, and before I know it, we're heading into the south end of Halifax, and this is when I start weighing the pros and cons of, do I like try to take out this guy? I'm bigger than him. At the same time, he's got like cocaine in this compartment. He's wearing gloves. In any case, I chose not to do that based on the fact that I didn't want him to veer into a tree. I didn't want to get stabbed in the neck with a needle and wake up with a gag ball in my mouth. So I messaged a friend instead, and I just kind of said to them, like, I need you to call me right now. And I got them to fake that their house might be broken into, and they were afraid. And they were only about a block away. So he grudgingly kind of agreed to drop me off. Shit was getting very weird at this point. But he stopped the car, and before he let me out of the car, he kind of locked the doors on the car. And you know those locks that like disappear? Instead of just going down, they disappear. Mm-hmm. He had those locks. And that's kind of a oh shit moment when the locks disappear. And then he kind of just like looked at me and just said, okay, we should get each other's number. Like, put your number in my phone. And my first thought is, okay, I'll just give this weirdo one digit off and I'll be good to go. And he just says, it is weird. I can't emphasize how weird his voice was, but okay, and I'm going to call it to make sure it's the right number. And then I'm like, oh shit, like this is really getting weird, but I'll just do anything to get out of this goddamn steel box on wheels so I'm away from this dude right now. So I enter my real number in his phone, just thinking that as soon as I get out of the car, I'm going to block this number. I enter my number, he calls it, which is creepy as shit. It rings, and he lets me out of the car. But before I even got up the steps of my friend's house that I was at, I just blocked his number right away. So that, for me, I assumed that was going to be the end of the story. I mean, I've got it in the back of my mind that he knows the general vicinity that I live, but I'm not too worried about it based on the fact that I blocked his number. It sounds like he does this on a weekly basis, so I think I'm going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And then in the weeks that followed, I started receiving calls from unknown numbers at around 4 or 5 in the morning on only Saturdays and Sundays. And eventually it starts to dawn on me. I'm like, oh, shit. I know this guy is blowing up my goddamn phone. So I just kind of stomached it for a little while. I mean, obviously, if you're being woken up at 4 in the morning to an unknown number that you know is a glove salesman who probably wants to tie you up with the same leather he uses to produce his gloves, it's not the most comforting thought. But I'm going to say about 2 months into this of him calling me on a weekly basis, I finally get a voicemail. Against my better judgment, I listened to the voicemail, and what I heard was kind of just the most vile, grotesque thing I've ever heard, all directed at me.
I need to hear this.
Do you have it?
Of course I have it. But this is the decision that you need to make. When I say, he says how vile and disturbing it is, this will be the most vile and disturbing thing ever aired on Morbid if we do this.
Well, and also, that lock thing reminded me of The Collector, the Bone Collector. I don't know if you've seen that movie. The guy he picks people up in a cab, and that's how he kidnaps people. And when he will lock the doors, and when they go to unlock it, he shaved them into like little points.
What?
So you end up like slicing your finger, and you can't open. And I immediately thought of that. I was like, oh God, that's so awful.
Fucked.
What I'm picturing is like the kind of lock where it's like a little like metal pin that sticks up from a hole, and when you lock it from the driver's seat, it kind of drops into the hole, so you can't grab it and unlock it yourself. Giving this guy your number and him checking it before you get out of the car is
so real.
But have you? I was going to say that's happened to you. Me too.
And I got caught like with the no because I gave.
You gave a fake number,
and they called it, and I was like, "Oops, I'm on silent. Bye."
Runs off.
I've just been in the experience where they're like, "And I'm going to call you."
Yeah,
so you're like, "Let me just give you my real fucking number then."
I was like, "Go ahead. You're going to be embarrassed, not me."
I will tell you that this guy did go on to change his number as a result of this whole spectacle.
But that's awful that he had to do that.
We're beating around the bush. You want to do it?
I'm so scared, but yes.
Here we go.
I'm so scared.
What if we're just like, oh yeah, people have said that to us before.
What if we listened to it? We're like, that wasn't that bad.
All right.
Here it comes.
Wow.
I'm never going to be invited back, am I?
Because I genuinely because the way these men are relaying these stories is doing it in a way, like a humorous way. Like they're trying to be like, what the fuck? Like this guy has a significant amount of coke. And it's like, they're just being funny. But like when you listen to the actual, like, what's happening, you're like, this is terrifying.
It's fucked up.
And what a traumatizing experience. Like this guy literally was trying to contemplate whether he was going to die if this guy veered off the road to kill them both, or if he could attack him if he needed to. Like these are things nobody should have to deal with. And it's like, I feel so bad. And then to deal with that afterwards.
Oh, no,
Holy
thank you.
shit.
And we didn't even talk
to
about
get
the
something
pop
like
bottle,
that?
too. Like to pass someone a pop bottle, like, have a drink of this.
What the
Where it's clearly
fuck?
the wrong color of
And
Coke.
it's just like,
What?
like, what? And then just be like, you want some Coke? And just
Wait,
like,
did you just say that wasn't the darkest one? Is there still one left?
Yeah.
That's not the darkest one?
this is so, I feel
there's
so
this
bad.
whole other story that happened. Because what went on is I initially planned to do an episode called The Legend of the Glove Guy, which told these stories of people who had experiences with him and I was making a point to not name his business or give his name or anything like the glove guy himself. And I just kept it about kind of the urban legend that surrounds him and, what people have experienced and what stories are told. So I released my first episode, and to say all hell broke loose was a complete understatement. Glove Guy found out about my episode, and he absolutely did not appreciate the exposure of what he was doing. He was sending me and a bunch of other people like these unhinged messages, emails in all caps, run-on sentences. And one of the people he reached out to, it seems, was CBC, which is like our Canadian, like our biggest news company in Canada, the Canadian Broadcast Corporation. He seemed to have contacted them in some way to let them know that like this whole thing happened with some podcast who spout out lies about him. And he seemed to tell them that, but I'm suing them, or I sued them, and now I own the podcast. So it quickly turned into this kind of like him claiming ownership of the podcast and him writing me messages like asking me to stop using the name Nighttime because he owned it now. And I just kind of ignored it. But here's where it gets wild is as this all was happening, like when I was doing the original episode, I learned that there was more to the glove guy. I found out who he was and what his business was called. And I found out that he actually did have a criminal record related to this whole late night glove stuff.
Wow.
But I made a point to I'm not even airing that in the episode because I want to keep it kind of light into the style of the way the stories are told.
Yeah.
But when he went to the news and he said, I've never been in trouble. I've, hadn't done anything wrong. I'm just passionate about the sales of gloves, and people are taking that the wrong way. What he did to me as a way of, I don't know, to get back at me or something, is he started putting registrations for the name, the Nighttime Podcast, in different government directories as a way to claim ownership, or at least look like he actually owns the podcast. And this, it's kind of hard to explain it, but basically in Nova Scotia, certain businesses are required to register with the government and appear in this directory that shows like the name of the business, the type of the business, and who the owner is. So he put Nighttime on there with his name, his actual name, his home address, his phone number. And he was using that as a way to say, like, here is proof that I now own the podcast, and that episode's a lie and it's going to be taken down.
What?
And it was bordering on extortion to the point that I called the police, and it got to the point where any email I would get from him, I was just forwarding to the police and not responding because it was just so unhinged, the stuff that I was getting. But to clear my name, or maybe because I'm petty,
little bit of both.
I'm going to do one more episode about the glove guy. And I did a follow-up episode that was just a way to kind of say, like, the prior versions of the stories are a bit light, and told a bit light, but it is very dark. And I had gone to the court. Actually, I wrote to the police and said, like, can you give me any information about this guy? And they were quick to tell me there was charges against him and how to get and they explained how I could get the court documents. So I did. And I managed to get in touch with a young man who actually went to the police and went through the courts and had the glove guy formally charged. Up until the point that I released the episode, I don't think people knew about this young man or this story because, again, the version of the story that was shared is like, he seems like a harmless guy, but he's really weird.
Yeah.
I won't play you the whole telling of the story by this guy named, but I'll get kind of the main part that explains what actually happened. But him and I did a full episode together, so the actual conversation's like a half hour or so, but this will explain to you how far it actually went with who was a young man in Halifax, was, according to him, extremely inebriated, leaving downtown. The same story plays out. He's waiting for a cab, couldn't find one. Someone pulls up and offers him a ride, and he assumes it's a cab and gets in.
Oh, no.
But along the way, here's where it goes. And this is the darkest one.
Oh, no.
And
And before I play it, I will say as well, you'll notice immediately a difference in tone. The other people are like kind of light and laughing. This guy, his voice is shaking and you'll hear it.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I got on the drive just past my house. And I took off the gloves and I was just about to get out. And he's like, hey, can you 100% make sure like these are the gloves you want? I was like, I just tried them on. He said, well, just work them in a little bit more. Make sure those are the gloves you like. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll do it one last time. Done. Go home and sleep. So
you were feeling pretty weird by now, I guess.
Yeah, I felt like he kind of came off like he was trying to hit on me. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, really trying to get me to either, work in these gloves to the point where I'm going to rip them, or he just really wants me to buy these gloves and work them in.
Okay.
So I got him pull about 4 or 5 houses past mine because I don't like strangers knowing where I live. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you got pulled, I'm making sure you try on the glove. So I got the glove again. I put it on, and I'm working it on. I'm stretching the glove, and I was doing this for about 10, maybe 15 minutes before I finally looked over, and I was really trying to focus in on what he was doing. And I just remember him leaning back, and I remember seeing his penis was out, and he was jerking it.
Oh.
As soon as I seen that, I took off the glove, I opened up the door, I shut it, and I ran through my neighbor's yard, and I cut back to my house.
So you just took off right away?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that escalated.
Yeah.
That poor kid.
Like, so clearly the difference in style of telling the story.
Oh, it's such an immediate difference. Because that is such an escalation. Like the other ones were like, yeah, he seemed like he was getting a little
excited.
Flushed and breathing heavy and like a little excited. But that is like,
that's on another level.
Yeah, this guy that we just heard from, he went to the police and actually had the actual glove guy charged. And the glove guy pled guilty to, I think it was like indecent exposure was the charge against him. As far as I know, that was the only time he was charged in relation to like this actual activity. related to the gloves. But it's no surprise. Like when I knew that story and I'd heard that story early on, and I was like, I don't want to go there because it's like it changes kind of the nature of the whole thing.
Yeah,
but
it gets real dark.
When I did my second follow-up episode, I put that out as a way to, I guess, show that, for one, I wasn't just targeting this local guy with a fetish, but also to show how serious it actually is. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I think most of them are, although like I think with some of the earlier stories, if someone is just kind of vaguely kidnapping you in their car and forcing these gloves on you, I don't know if there's actually a crime there, but it's so close.
It's so close.
Because you'd think it's like almost like imprisonment in some way, like almost a kidnapping thing, because it's like he's not taking you where he said he would take you.
Right.
Yeah.
So you almost are like, oh, it's walking
just
that line.
tiptoeing right across the line.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, like, we've heard here probably, I don't know, like 5 or 6 stories. I probably had, at the time that I did my 2 episodes, I probably had 30 of them.
Wow.
And I still get them to this day. I did those episodes almost 2 years ago. I think I got one 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Someone was sending me, like, I do this series of episodes that we call Creep Encounters. And it's not specific to Glove Guy. It's just people sharing stories of encountering a creep. And I just happened to get one of the Creep Encounter stories last week or 2 weeks ago. It was clearly someone telling me the story about an encounter with Glove Guy. So it's
and these are recent encounters. Like he's still out there doing this.
It seems it, yeah. I don't know for sure, but it seems like I have ones from probably a year or so ago. I haven't heard anything very much lately. I've heard rumors that he left Halifax. I don't know if that's true. I don't want to run into him, and I certainly don't want to find out.
No, so you're just like, you know what? Whatever.
But I'll tell you, but we now have Uber in Halifax.
Well,
it's
that's
allowed
good.
now, so maybe that put him out of business.
Oh, maybe.
One would hope.
Because again, every one of those stories, they seem to be like, maybe he's Uber. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's that like weird up in the air.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they're not a taxi.
In the time that a lot of these stories took place in Halifax, since we didn't have Uber and we have a ton of students and a lot of bars and stuff, when you get out of a nightclub at 2 a.m, it's really hard to get a cab. You're waiting around and roaming around. So it would have been such an easy way to prey on, to get someone in your car. That's like the easiest time to do it.
Right.
But now with Uber and stuff in Halifax, it's probably not as easy.
And it's like, that these people are coming out inebriated, likely.
Right.
So they're not going to be in their best decision-making moment.
Yeah. Every one of them had been drinking that we talked to, or heard from. Everyone was drinking. Everyone was alone. And everyone just needed to drive home and ended up getting in a situation where they're like, I'm not going to push it with this guy, but when I get the right chance, I'm going to get out of here.
He picked the most vulnerable time, place, and like victim, essentially.
It's so weird though that he was so confident that these guys weren't going to attack him. Yeah. Because like you said, these are like bigger guys.
Yeah. Every one of them would have been people where I would have thought and I'm not a small guy, but all of these were people where I would have thought like, this is not someone I'm going to try to force my weird fetish on.
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess when you have a captive audience in your car, it's a whole different thing.
That's
and
the
whatever
thing.
else is going on with this guy.
Right.
If you had have not heard the different stories told, if you had just heard there's this guy driving around trying to get people to get gloves on, would you believe it?
Honestly, at this point in life, yes.
Right now.
Yeah.
Here, yes.
Maybe, like 5 years ago, no.
But it's so specific too. That's the thing. Like the trying on gloves is so specific that I'm like, I feel like that has to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird because everyone, it's the exact same story. It's just the fetish simply seems to be watching people struggle to get their hand in
like
a glove.
A leather fetish of some sort.
Yeah, a very specific leather fetish.
It's something
very niche.
Again, when forced onto someone, that is horrifying.
If that's your thing, just find somebody who also that's their thing.
Someone will consent to trying on leather gloves for you.
Yeah.
There has to be other people out there. That's like that would be a common. You would put like leather gloves. It's somewhere below high heels, but it's definitely there's a circuit.
There is,
but
of course.
It seems like that's part of it, that like they're not consenting.
I know. I was just going to say, I think that's part of it, is that the power dynamic, I think, is part of it.
That definitely changes it all.
Because there's like the locks that are like flush with that you can't get out once I hit that. It's like the give me your number and I'm going to call to make sure you gave me your number. Like there's a power thing here.
And it's fear-based for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised not a lot is done about it. By like, again, there was the one charge laid against him, but he seems to be careful enough that he's not getting himself in enough trouble.
Too far.
But it's so weird, and I think that gets you a pass. And I'll tell you, like, there was that whole situation with him registering the Nighttime Podcast as a business and all these different directories. I was trying to get those listings down just in case it confused anyone. So I was dealing with the government, like contacting them and being like, here's the story, sit down for this. This is what's going on. And I couldn't get them to take the directories down. So I eventually just ignored the whole situation and stopped responding to his emails. But I did do a Freedom of Information Act request on all the communication the Nova Scotia government had surrounding the registration of a business called the Nighttime Podcast. And I got like this big package of emails from the different officials going back and forth to their lawyers being like, what do we do with this situation? And you could see every one of them, like the email would start with like, this is weird, but hear me out.
This is weird,
Yeah.
but
They didn't know what to do with it. And eventually they just did what I did and just ignored the whole thing.
Well, this is uncharted territory.
it's weird too that like you did the podcast and you didn't name him, you didn't like out him in any way, and then he kind of just outed himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, he outed himself and went on the news talking about it. And if you read, like, if you do a Google search for like Glove Guy, Halifax, Nighttime Podcast, or Jordan Bonaparte, you'll find like there's two articles. One is on CBC and one is Vice magazine. And both of the articles include quotes from him that are some of the most insane things you've ever heard. And they include the quotes in their articles. So it's pretty clear to anyone who reads it what's going on. But man, it's something else.
Wow. And is this it? Is this the end of the saga, or is there more?
Do you hope so?
After everything happened with the copyright registration and him coming at me, I was like, I need to get my ducks in a row because this guy is wild. So it gave me a good excuse to deal with all the business side of stuff, like getting the trademark for Nighttime and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's all settled. I think what's next is I'm going to do a third, maybe fourth episode about this, where I'm just going to air out the rest of the stories I have, because I have a folder on my desktop that's just been eating a hole in my desktop full of Glove Guy stories. I'm going to put them out there. And I think I'll probably do it after you release your episode, because I'm sure people will want to hear.
They'll be like, wait a second.
Will want to hear more.
Yeah, I was going to say a certain subsect of people.
It's good that you're putting it out there because people need to hear that this guy's out
you
there
need to
somewhere.
Be careful.
Hell yeah.
That's the thing.
I think the stories are entertaining because they're so nuts, but it is a public service. People should know if you're going to just get in a car with a random person. Again, we said this multiple times, but women are kind of taught you don't do that. Men, not so much.
Right.
Yeah, maybe it's a wake-up call.
Yeah,
just humans in general.
Different.
Don't get in a car with someone you don't know.
Truly, because here, like we said before, like hearing their thoughts after the experience is so like, I'm like, we get it. Like, I'm just like, we get that. Like, that's exactly your thoughts after a weird experience.
Yeah.
And like, don't
I know
blame
you guys
yourself.
You do like kind of listener stories where listeners share. It's often like supernatural and stuff. But have you ever had anything like this?
Not like this. We get some listeners who are like, I shouldn't have gotten in a car like that night. I always feel bad because they blame themselves at the end. They're always like, I was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. And it's like, well, it sucks that the world is like this and that you can't do that, but it's not your fault.
Most of us have been there where you're like, shit, probably shouldn't have done that.
But nothing like Glove Guy.
No, I've never heard a story like Glove Guy.
But it could be a horror movie. And Elena, I know you're right into horror. This could easily be adapted to a horror movie. I can imagine the scene at the beginning where he's stitching the gloves.
Yes, with the sunglasses.
And pulling the leather and everything. Like, you can just see this whole scene. And the sunglasses and the
setting up the camera. Yeah, I hate it.
So, it's cinematic, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the people who got in the car with him. But
Me
again, they all seem to be taking it in stride. Everyone except one of the guys we heard from was able to laugh at it when they got out.
Which hopefully they're able to like just be like, that was a weird moment in life.
Yeah, that poor last, I mean, poor all of them, but that poor last guy, he really went through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that interview with him in person, and it was like I've interviewed like sex assault victims in the past or victims of sex trafficking, and his, like the way he presented and the way he told the story was just like the other stories that I heard from people who were, one I can think of particularly, I talked to on my show that was a victim of child sex trafficking.
Oh, wow.
And the way she described the story, it was with the same kind of flow and emotion that he told his. So there's no doubt in my mind that it's traumatized that guy.
Yeah.
How couldn't it? Like, that's so disturbing.
Because there doesn't need to be like contact. It's
For
like
it
this
to be
guy
a sexual assault. Yeah.
That's so traumatizing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
What a story, Jordan. I don't know how to recover from this one.
Well, I think I'm the opposite of like the Halifax tourism person, because I just come on every couple of years and remind Morbid listeners that it's
by
really
the way,
crazy here.
Hey everybody, news from Canada.
Last time I was on, we did Lindsay Suvanarath, the American woman who tried to commit the mass shooting in Halifax, who is eligible for parole in about 1 year from now.
Yeah.
So for people who've heard that story, buckle up.
Oh man.
That's another one. That's just
I know,
nuts.
that's another scary one.
Yeah, Jordan, you have wild stories.
You do.
But we're always down to hear them.
But that's why we welcome you back all
exactly.
the time. And again, you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, you're perfect for Morbid.
You are.
Definitely a weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You absolutely are. You fit the bill.
Well,
and everybody
I'm
go
happy that
listen
you
to
had me.
Nighttime.
I appreciate it so much, and hope to do it again soon. And I hope to have you both on my show soon.
Yeah.
We would love to.
That'd be fun.
Let's do it.
In the meantime, go listen to Nighttime.
And we hope you keep listening. And we hope you
keep
it weird. But not so weird as the glove guy.
That's not weird.
That's a
if there
different
was
level.
consent, it would be weird.
Yeah.
Without consent, it's just wrong.
It's just wrong. Exactly.
Perfect way to put that.
Wow.